Pokemon is one of the most important franchises in my life. It's been a driving force since I first watched the Indigo League as a child. From there, my parents bought me a copy of Leaf Green from a Toys R Us before returning there for a copy of Fire Red for my sister. Since then, it's been an undying source of inspiration for me creatively and formatively. Yes, the games aren't perfect due to the recent decline in quality. However, it is still a game that has brought me many fond memories and connections to many of my dearest, most important friends. I wouldn't be the person I am today if it wasn't for Pokemon. I love this series and it brings me so much excitement to finally post my first video essay on it. Despite its technical failings, Scarlet and Violet bring a lot of value to the franchise and has provided one of the best stories since the Black and White Quadrangle and Sun and Moon. I believe that there are no shitty Pokemon games in concept, and in fact, the writing of Scarlet and Violet have a lot going for it. The Teal mask in particular has brought us two of the most compelling and nuanced characters to date in Carmine and Kieran. That being said, I've had thoughts about these two's story, and with the Indigo disc coming out officially tomorrow, I want to present them here now. Life often is very much not fair. Someone can put in all of the work for a desired result and still not get anything out of it. This can be true especially in the case of love and attraction. Someone can put in 100% genuine effort to be uplifting and appeal to the object of their desire, only to lose out to someone who put in less effort than them. However, fairness means different things in different situations, and what may seem unfair to someone due to emotion may actually be fair objectively. This is one of the last lessons we expect to learn in a Pokemon game, and yet, here I am, surprised. Hi, I'm Asper Black 64, and in this video, we're going to analyze the story of Kieran in the Teal mask and answer two questions. Was the story and its characters unfair to Kieran? And was Kieran unfair to others, and why? Let's get into it. First, for those who haven't played the DLC or live under a gigalith, I think it's important to explain the context of the siblings and who they are in relation to each other and the player. Kieran and Carmine are two sibling trainers attending Blueberry Academy in the Unova region. They are native to the land of Kitakami and are the characters that Florian and Juliana befriend during their trip to the island. Both Kieran and Carmine are actually pretty nuanced characters, so I will list out the key components of their personality here. As stated on the Pokemon Wiki, Carmine is described to have a strong will, but is sometimes a bit selfish. She deeply cares for her younger brother Kieran, despite initially being a bit rough on him. Carmine can be a bit cold-hearted when meeting new people at first, but will warm up to them after spending more time with them. Though not intentionally xenophobic, Carmine did hold a fear of outsiders coming to Kitakami and disturbing their sacred lands. However, this can be seen more as anxiety, as after getting to know the player and the other Paldean students, she ends up being glad they came to visit. Carmine's selfish tendencies will come more into play when we get into Kieran's character. And, speaking of the main man of the video, the Pokemon Wiki states this on Kieran's personality. Kieran is a quiet boy with a gentle nature. He often hides behind his older sister. But he also shows signs of interest in the player character, seeing them as cool. Despite this, he desires to become strong. He is one of the few people who like Ogerpon rather than the Loyal 3 because of how powerful it was alone. Over time, he appears to become jealous of the player character due to them catching Ogerpon and mysteriously stating to triumph over them when alone in his room. Now, whether his liking of Ogerpon before she was revealed to be a good guy states something ominous about his character is something wholly different than what we're talking about today. However, one can interpret some implication on the part of the game by the fact that Kieran doesn't believe certain parts of the fabricated legend, such as the ogre stealing souls. Even Kieran's grandfather said that he wouldn't be surprised if he somehow intuited the truth. Nevertheless, his obsession with Ogerpon does mainly speak to his desire for strength when analyzing the framework of Carmine's treatment of him. While also not stated in the wiki, Kieran has an understandable but bad habit of running away from a confrontation when things don't go his way or he gets overwhelmed with his emotion. This is not helped when Carmine shows little to no sympathy or understanding of his emotions and headspace for the first 2 acts of the story. And with that being said, we will summarize the content of the story before getting into what Kieran's character in specific teaches us about unfairness. In the story of the Teal Mask, Florian or Juliana, along with other random NPCs, because Nimona, Penny, and Arvin aren't there for some reason, are selected to go to Kitakami for a joint field trip with Blueberry Academy, their sister school. During their orienteering activity, the player is paired up with Kieran to learn about his homeland. Kieran tells the player about the story of how the Loyal Three saved the village of Mosui from the evil Ogerpon. However, he also states how he actually likes the ogre character due to its great displays of strength and sympathizing with the ogre's depiction as an outcast. Later that night, the player and Carmine see Ogerpon at the Festival of Masks, but decide to keep it from Kieran as learning that he missed the chance to see his idol would break his heart. Carmine also did not want Kieran running out to chase Ogerpon at night when the mountains are at their most dangerous. This decision, unfortunately, starts a bad train of events in Kieran's point of view when his and Carmine's grandfather tells Carmine and the player the truth of the story's falsified history, and all of them decide to keep it from Kieran in order to keep up the town's status quo. It's just unfortunate for them that Kieran overheard their conversation, and angry that it seemed they were excluding him out of context, stole the mask and forced Florian or Juliana to battle him for it back. This battle also awakened the Loyal Three, freeing them to wreak havoc on Kitakami once more. The final act of the plot involves the players saving Ogerpon from the Loyal Three on their own, and working with Carmine to defeat the newly invigorated Loyal Three. Meanwhile, Kieran decides to help out by telling everyone in town that it was Ogerpon who was the true hero, and that the Loyal Three were in the wrong by killing Ogerpon's companion. He also proves his grandfather and Carmine wrong when the town actually reacts to the news well and rightfully makes amends with Ogerpon. At the end of Kieran's point of view, he and the player have an emotionally charged Pokemon battle when Ogerpon chooses the player as his trainer instead of him, sparking a jealous reaction from the young boy. That being said, it's time to look at how Kieran's story can be looked at as unfair. From a textbook understanding of the word, I believe that the story, characters, and Ogerpon herself were incredibly unfair to Kieran. Looking at Kieran as a character, we know 3 major things. He is a shy, introverted person who has trouble with people and making friends. He loves Ogerpon and feels as if he can relate to her due to both of them feeling outcasted by the village, and his family and possibly peers. Finally, Kieran has an obsession with getting strength and viewing himself as weak. The third point is even more obvious when one takes a look at his relationship with Carmine. Kieran is made to look like the more submissive in the relationship, with Carmine lashing out at him should he talk back or defend himself for valid reasons. Despite not being genuine all the time, the fact that Carmine would resort to abrasiveness to keep Kieran away from her and the player while they were helping Ogerpon can be seen as a particularly exclusive and abusive choice. Using that as a segue to circle to the beginning of the story, the first example of the unfairness Kieran is dealt with is the conflict between him and Florian or Juliana. The player is one of the first few friends that Kieran makes, and it's even confirmed by Carmine multiple times that Kieran found the player interesting and wanted to be their friend. It is very understandable that after going along with Carmine's choice to lie to him about not having seen Ogerpon just after he felt that they were getting to be great friends, he would feel reasonably betrayed. He even goes as far as saying that what Carmine and the player did to him was no different than what the village did to Ogerpon, despite the mistaken context that the villagers took that Ogerpon murdered their heroes. However, the villagers drew this conclusion in part from how Ogerpon looked instead of asking questions as to why she killed the 3 Pokemon and didn't even bother investigating the death of her companion due to the fact that they already rejected them for being different. However, Kieran's comparison still holds weight. He is legitimate and valid in being betrayed by the player and his sister. The second part that one could see that's unfair to Kieran is Ogerpon choosing Florian/Juliana over him. This is more of a gray area. In fact, most of the rest of this section will go to examining one half of 2 arguments. From a narrative standpoint, Kieran would undoubtedly be the main character if the player did not exist. Kieran has all of the characteristics to give him more of the stake in the story. He is a native of Kitakami, he is invested in the legends and has an interest in Ogerpon, and his interest of Ogerpon is enough to set him apart from everyone else, giving him the necessary components to drive the story. Lastly, his willingness to help Ogerpon makes him stand out from the others. In fact, if Carmine hadn't strong-armed the player into lying to Kieran, there would have been opportunities to bring him into the action and give him more chances to contribute meaningfully. This is mainly a gripe with the writing, but Ogerpon only met the player during the festival once and instantly got attached to them. This strengthened when the player goes to save Ogerpon from the Loyal 3 alone while Carmine is helping somewhere else. The writers of Pokemon have this way of framing the story as if the player is the special chosen one, destined to catch every legendary and mythical Pokemon. While this is necessary for the gameplay and the player's enjoyment and involvement, it does make fans feel salty when characters they've come to love such as Kieran and Lily from Sun and Moon get shafted out of Pokemon that it would make stronger sense for them to keep. A lot of the player's bond with Ogerpon feels forced as hell due to Carmine specifically trying to keep Kieran out of the adventure and the player not being given a chance to fight back or go along with it. Kieran is fully in the right when looking at the writing from a certain point of view. In the end, Carmine's actions have worsened Kieran's mental state, with both having little understanding of why and how. In these ways, the story was objectively unfair toward Kieran as a character. However, now that we're done sucking his dick, we will talk about the other equally valid side of the argument. And that is Kieran greatly shoots himself in the foot with his reaction at the end of the Teal mask and his actions throughout the story itself. In the last scene, we see Kieran jealously challenge the player for the right to be Ogerpon's trainer. However, as Carmine points out in one of the only instances where she can have a valid point, Ogerpon is a being with her own feelings and intelligence. As much as Kieran was unfairly treated, he is unfairly treating Ogerpon like an object instead of a living creature. Yes, he is 13 and emotionally immature, but it does not excuse his actions. Furthermore, that same immaturity is what helps Carmine's lying and exclusion further cement the player's suitability as Ogerpon's trainer. While Kieran was the one who was responsible for helping Ogerpon's ability to now enter Mosui Town again, his tendency to run away when his emotions are high and hide instead of talking things out with people cost him opportunities to be helpful in the spotlight. Instead, he chooses to pout in his room and let Carmine and the player do all the work to defeat the Loyal Three and get back Ogerpon's masks. If he had, say, been a multi-battle tag partner for one of the Loyal Three after the player, say, teams up with Carmine, or, the player and Carmine probably didn't team up. I might be misremembering that. But there were ways other than just helping her enter the town that Ogerpon could have grown to see Kieran as an equally suitable option if given more screen time. Either way, it is ultimately established, given that this is part 1 out of a 2-part story, that these traits of Kieran's are going to be part of his character arc in the Indigo Disc. And I want to be clear, this is 100% valid. In the context of what they're setting up, this is a perfect story with Kieran being set up as a potentially beyond effective antagonist. But without this, it does seem like the treatment of Kieran as a character is done in poor taste. Was the story unfair to Kieran? Yes. But was it still a fair outcome and deserved? Also yes. It is important to recognize that just because Kieran has the connection to Kitakami, and that it would make sense that he'd be the one to get Ogerpon, that life does not always work like that. Those certain things do not make us entitled to those rewards. It sucks, and nothing that Kieran is feeling is invalid. It's completely understandable, which is why he's one of the most compelling characters in this DLC. But for Kieran and the player, this was their journey to see how unfair life can truly be. Kieran loved the ogre. He is a native of Kitakami, but just because the player is a foreigner with a newer attachment to Ogerpon does not entitle Kieran to be Ogerpon's trainer. It does not give him the right to disregard Ogerpon's feelings towards the player, because that is not fair, and it is not true love. Pokemon has taught people many valuable lessons about the power of love and friendship. Unfortunately, sometimes getting nothing and still trying to find it in your heart to be happy that someone else is getting something is a crucial part of life. In the end, fairness is not a simple concept. It is not a tit-for-tat arrangement, but one that everyone gets exactly what they need. Kieran could have been more fair, but so could Carmine. At least being a part of the story would have been fair to him due to not getting Ogerpon at the end. The way to make an unfair life fair, or even manageable, is to be kind, loving, and selfless. Hi everyone, thank you for watching this video. I apologize for this upload being late, as it was supposed to come out last month, but I've had to deal with some other priorities, and the Thanksgiving holiday resulted in things getting away from me. As I said at the beginning, Pokemon is one of my all-time favorite series and core sources of inspiration. I've been wanting to make videos on it since I was in college, and now I finally get to do that. Given that this video is dropping the night before Indigo Disc comes out, I might make a follow-up to this video depending on what I think of Kieran's portrayal as a boss. Well, according to what the trailer showed anyway. If you like this video, stay tuned for that one. I want to thank Beard Bear for allowing me to use the footage of his Teal Mask playthrough. He's a really good player, and if you're new to this entry and want to know what to expect, his long play is the perfect reference. I also want to thank my family and friends for their support, as without them, I wouldn't be able to make high quality content as easy as I can. I release new videos every month and sometimes twice a month. If you liked what you saw, please leave a like and subscribe for more.